Could I ask you to turn now, please, sir, to the tests in particular that we talked about at the University of Southern California and UCLA that were funded by EPA, even though its own rules prohibits experimental human experiments with children?
Well, what we found from a Freedom of Information Act request is that in the early 2000s, a research project was conducted in Southern California with participation of USC and UCLA that involved exposing kids to diesel exhaust by spraying stuff in their nose. And although they didn't find any toxic effects, clearly the decision to have 10, 15-year-olds involved in this kind of research was an indication that UCLA and USC were involved in children's research. Now, I can't tell you how many other projects might have involved children because these projects are not necessarily known to us, but that's what we found on the basis of a Freedom of Information Act request that was filed by the organization that originally filed the lawsuit against the EPA for the University of North Carolina activity. They've changed their name, so I can't tell you what it is right now, but the American Traditions Institute changed their name. They continue to work. There's a guy named David Schneier who's a lawyer for that organization, and he was the one who filed the Freedom of Information Act, which revealed the information that you have in your hands with regards to experiments on kids at USC and UCLA.
And the information that I've reviewed that you've sent me shows that at least one and maybe more of those children were 10 years of age.
That's correct. And they were, now the other thing that you have to remember about children and experiments is that children are not competent, and I try to use that word in an artistic way, the way that an attorney would be able to describe it. There are two components to proper consent. One is capacity and the other is competence. You can be competent but not have the capacity. Capacity is to understand the risks and benefits and the consequences of your decision, your consent. And competence involves the rules that would apply that would allow you to consent in the first place. Well, children don't have capacity or competence, and there's no way that adults, parents, can consent to harmful experiments on children. Now, they can consent to experimental activities that involve children, provided that those experimental activities don't involve any kind of potential harm. They can also consent to research that might be beneficial for a child.
But the EPA...
But there's no way that an adult or that a parent can consent to anything that might be harmful to a child, and there is no way that it's ethical or legal for a researcher to attempt to obtain that consent from a parent.
And the EPA was funding these even though their own rule prohibits the testing of children. And I have that rule to offer.
Here's how they finagled it. They told the parents, well, this is no more than the amount of air pollution that they would be exposed to if they were in Los Angeles for a day.
I've read the consent forms that you sent me that they use, the so-called consent forms, and I don't find in those consent forms anywhere that the report of the potential harm anywhere nears what Administrator Jackson said to the Congress about small particulates?
Well, how could it? I mean, what parent would allow an experiment on a child if you said, well, now, you have to understand the child could get cancer sometime in the future, and this could kill him, and if it doesn't kill him, it could harm him. I mean, first of all, I think that the Child Protective Service would be there in a flash to find out who it was that was allowing a child to be exposed to this kind of. Here we are in a society where everybody is very concerned and conscious of the fact that children are innocents, and anything that happens to a child because of the misconduct or the perfidiousness of an adult is actionable, criminally actionable, and so you got a situation where if you were a parent and consented to what should have been the proper informed consent for this kind of a situation, you may find yourself in jail. So what are these researchers thinking? What are these researchers thinking? You know, one of the things that strikes me, and I've tried to explain this to people, they say, well, you know, maybe the EPA was just this is a wink and a nod. They knew all along that small particles weren't hurting anybody, that it was just something they wanted to regulate, so they got all of the testimony in front of the Congress where they're making it sound like a big deal, but they knew it really wasn't that big a deal, and the medical schools knew, and the researchers knew. Okay, so why are they doing these experiments? What are they doing these experiments for? They're getting what they want. They go to the Congress and they lie, and they're getting all the regulations that they want to get. They're still doing the human experiments. Well, it's because these people just can't leave it go. They wanted to find something, and they were willing to sort of play fast and loose with the truth. If the truth is this stuff doesn't hurt anybody based upon the epidemiology that we have, then they could have said, we can't find much of an effect, probably doesn't have any harmful effect. And then Lisa Jackson has to go to the Congress and say, well, we thought it was a big deal, but it's not. But we still want those regulations because we want to regulate stuff. Now, you know, you can take this down to the level of the state of California. The California Air Resources Board is doing the same thing. They're claiming that small particles are terrible, and when the hearings are held, the mothers come and they say that their children are being exposed to small particles and it's harmful to them, and this is terrible. We've got to stop this. And it's Southern Cal and at UCLA, they're saying, well, it's really not that bad. We gotta see if maybe we can really find something here. Let's do some human experiments, and let's do it on kids. And in fact, one of the things that I sent you that we've just found out from another Freedom of Information Act is research where they put people in exercise mode and exposed them to small particles to see if they could produce any kind of an abnormal effect. It's the link is EPA exposes exercising asthmatics to 9 times more diesel particulate than the EPA says is safe. 9 times. If you know anything about how they decide what's safe and what's not safe, it's pretty arbitrary. The EPA gets to do whatever they want to. And what we've got now is air standards that say that the acceptable level for a 24-hour period is 35 mics, and that's an extraordinarily small amount per cubic meter. What they're saying is these people are exposed to 270 micrograms. There's no way for you or I to even imagine how small a microgram is. It's a really small thing, and that's micrograms per cubic meter, which means a meter on all sides. It's a big square that's a meter on all sides. So it's a big space of air, and you put 30 micrograms in there, and that's considered the safe level by the EPA. And what they're saying is, this research was done by exposing asthmatics who were in an exercise program, and they were exposed to 9 times that level. So, I guess you might say, how are they going to explain this? Well, what they're going to say is coming out of both sides of their mouth. Well, small particles really aren't that dangerous. They really don't cause that much trouble. Yeah, but we still want to regulate them, and we still need to see if we can find out some toxic effect. And so, well, let's continue with the human experiments.
Dr. Dunn, I want to thank you very much. I want to ask the members of the board, Mr. Hearing Officer, if they have any questions, and if they do, I'll probably have to repeat it so that he can hear it.
Yes, sir.
I just want to clarify some things to make sure that I have a firm foundation of what's going on here.
Dr. Dunn, can you hear the member of the board?
I'm afraid the sound is really hard for me to pick up.
Okay, I'll repeat his questions to you then. He says he has a few things he wants to clear up so he understands, so I'll repeat his questions to you.
Okay.
That'd be fine. Thank you.
So essentially, CARB and EPA have taken a predetermined data set.
What Mr. Smith is starting with is, so CARB and EPA have taken a predetermined data set
Of arbitrary citizens, completely disregarded any other potential health factors, whether it be alcoholism, smoking, anything.
completely disregarding any other factors such as alcoholism, smoking, anything else.
And come to the conclusion that citizens are exposed to small particulate matter.
And come to the conclusion that those citizens exposed to small particulate matter.
And that citizens die.
And die from that.
No,
And that
citizens die. So therefore, citizens die from exposure to
Right.
small particulate matter, regardless of anything else.
I got you. So that, and citizens die, so that leads to the conclusion that citizens die from exposure to small particulate matters, no matter what else was involved.
Mr. Smith sounds like he's a pretty smart guy. And let me reinforce what you've said, Mr. Smith. Population studies are so bad because we know so little about the people who died. All that the EPA researchers do and the CARB researchers do is they look at the death certificate. The death certificate, as you might know, is filled out by the physician who's considered to be the most appropriate choice for determining the cause of death. Okay? So, death certificates for air pollution studies are restricted only in the sense that they eliminate deaths from trauma and deaths from cancer. And so, in effect, anybody who dies when their heart stops is considered to be a qualification for a death that might be counted as a death from small particle air pollution. Okay, so remember, there's another step involved here. They are trying to establish, for purposes of scaring the public, that their particular studies identify people who were the victims of premature death. All right.
Okay.
So, Mr. Smith is a smart guy, and he's saying, I know what premature death is. Premature death is death before you're supposed to die. And right. I bought an insurance policy, and I know that those insurance people do actuarial studies on people, and they know that if you're 55, you got heart trouble or high blood pressure or diabetes, your life expectancy is a little different from a guy who's 55 who's healthy and can run a marathon, okay? So, the premature death numbers should be based upon your life expectancy. This is going to be something that the board that you need to tell your children, this is how bad this science is. If you're 99 years old and you die on the day when the death rate is elevated and it looks like it's going to prove up their case for air pollution causing an increased rate of death, even if you're 99 and you die on that day, you are considered to be a premature death.
Okay.
They aren't doing studies on premature deaths. They're just counting dead bodies and matching up dead bodies on the days when the death rate is higher than it normally is with what they found in their computers was an association with an increase in the air pollution for the area that would impact this population of people. I told you there are 100,000 people that live in the town of Oxnard, and 57 people are supposed to die every day on an average. And on the day, 2 days after the air pollution went up, the air pollution went up a little bit, and 2 days later, it was 62 people died in Oxnard. Guess what? They count 5 premature deaths.
Any other questions
62
from the
people
board?
died instead of 57. And if 3 of those people were in excess of 100 years old,
They'd still
they're
count.
still called premature death.
Okay.
Any
Is
other
that crazy?
questions?
Is that the kind of stuff that you would say, this is good science, I really want to teach my kids how to do this kind of science?
Any other questions from the board?
I don't have a question, but
Wait,
I don't have a question, but I think Ronald Reagan was right when he said government is not the answer, it is the problem.
one of our members says that she believes that Reagan was right when he said that government was not the answer but was the problem.
It's worse than that. You know what? I would ask the board to consider this. But it's not worse than that. It's part of the same picture. When Dwight D. Eisenhower gave his farewell speech, everybody remembers that he warned us about the military-industrial complex and how if the military and the government get together and the industry people cooperate with them, you can end up with a very big kind of a club, okay? Right after that, in the same speech, he warned against the government research complex.
Now, you just took away one of my best lines in my closing, but that's all right. They'll get it twice now.
Well, the reason that I mention this to the board is they need to understand, if there's money floating around and you're an ambitious scientist and you know that doing research for the EPA that proves up their case will make sure that your wife is happy, that you get good furniture, and that you drive a nice car, and that your career is well established, and the university is appreciating all the money that you're bringing in, are you going to compromise that opportunity to be successful, prosperous, and prominent by telling the truth?
Doctor,
If you told the truth, how long do you think you'd keep a job when the EPA said, we can't really be sending you any research money. University of North Carolina is a big place. They got lots of money. They're very rich. They're wonderful. They have great basketball, but lousy football. The point is that the University of North Carolina knows how much money is involved here. We're talking millions of bucks. And the other part that you need to understand about this is that there is no way that the institutions are not interested, because they get an overhead. Let's say, for example, I'm Dr. Dunn, and I'm a favorite of the EPA because I always deliver. I deliver research projects that show that the EPA should be regulating small particles. So every year, they renew my grant, and they give me $1 million. Guess how much money the University of Dr. Dunn gets out of that $1 million? They get 20%. It's overhead for running the university. I got to have a place to work. I got to have a laboratory. I got to have a university that's going to have an institutional review board that'll say, boy, that Dr. Dunn, he's doing great research, even though he's doing human experiments on people with harmful substances. What do you think was the response of the University of North Carolina School of Medicine when I wrote them a letter and said, you know that you're doing human experiments in your institution that are exposing people to what the EPA says is toxic, lethal, and causes cancer? I couldn't get him to answer me. I did talk to the lady who was in charge of the Institutional Review Board for the University of North Carolina School of Medicine. And she said she'd get back to me. I'm still waiting.
That's a famous
That's
line.
2 years.
Doctor, I want to thank you very much for testifying, and I'm sure that I'm going to be in touch with you later. Thank you very much.
I have one thing to say before I leave.
Okay.
I know that you members of the board probably came to this meeting and hearing with the idea, well, gee, you know, this is kind of a pain in the neck. One, I want to thank you for your service. I work for the Army. I tell soldiers every day, thank you for your service. I'm telling you the same thing. Thank you for your service. You're civic-minded people, and I appreciate the fact that you're doing it. And I hope that my testimony was not boring.
Well, that's one thing I can assure you, it was not. Thank you very much, Doctor.
It was my pleasure, and I'm available to you tomorrow if the board has something that they're worried about or concerned about, or they think needs to be clarified. Tomorrow is a Saturday. Other than feeding horses and taking care of dogs, I don't do anything on Saturday.
All right. Thank you very much.
Goodbye.